Well, good morning, everyone. This is part 4 on a mini split series. Now, who would have ever thought you could get 4 different shows on a mini split, on putting in a mini split? Now, I've got one here. What we're going to do in this one is going to be limited to looking at some specs, trying to differentiate, look for what you look for when you look for specs. Because are you really getting a deal when you buy one of those units? Why are some more expensive than others? Are you really just buying a headache in a year or two after the warranty expires? And will you even have a warranty if you DIY? Most of these manufacturers will sell them DIY, that you can get them, or they'll sell them without the questions being asked, are you EPA certified or whatever, and you may not have the equipment to install them. And in most cases, you're not going to have a warranty when you're done with it if you're not real careful. But you'll need to verify that yourself depending on who you want to work with. So I'm going to look at some specs. We're going to go to public data for the unit that I bought, and we'll start there in just a second. Here we are at famous Google, a search engine, and I have typed in a model number and the word service manual, and we see that we have some people already getting pushed to the front through the SEO, search engine optimization, and we're going to go down here to Mitsubishi's MyLink drive. So we're going to click on that. We're going to pull this up. Now this happens to be the wall unit. I'm going to load up the condensing unit as well. So here we are. We've pulled up the condensing unit, and on the other tab we have the head unit or fan coil unit, depending on how you want to call it. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my little in picture off so we can look at the specs a little bit better on maybe some smaller screens. Now that we have this adjusted for better viewing for you, we want to look down here. Let's take a look at submittals right off the bat. Right there they are. And we'll look at this sheet. We're going to pull down to the specifications of the condensing unit. I'm going to plus it a few more times since I've got my head out of the way. And what I want to look at are the heating and coolings. We'll look at those right off the bat. We see that this one does in fact have a rating at negative 13 degrees. Now here in Tennessee where I live, that's not a realistic problem on a regular basis down here. We also have it minus 5 degrees. We did see some cold weather this year in December, or actually that would be technically last year. So we did see some minus 4s, and I may have seen a minus 5 back in that day, but you want to look at that capacity for the heating so you get a good idea, how is it going to actually perform during cold weather? Is it even rated for negative 5 degrees? What is the minimum temperature? Is the minimum temperature on the unit you're buying for $800, $900? Is it going to be rated down that low? Or how big of a drop in the heating capacity do you get from this? Now, if we go up to heating at 5 degrees, which is very reasonable for almost all of the year, we're going to have at least 10,500 BTUs during the heat mode in the winter at 5 degrees. So that's a big thing that you want to really look at there. When you see that, you want to look at both your heat and cool rating if you're getting a heat pump. I mean, that's common sense. I would think that we would have. But do you have that information available? Do they publicize it, or do you have to then go ask for it? Or is it where you can find it publicly like Mitsubishi does, or you can just go look at it yourself versus having to beg for the information? Let's go back. Cooling, we have maximum capacity is 9,000, that's 3/4 tons. This is rated at half a ton, and that's more than what I need. So if you oversize a unit, you can find you have some problems. Depending on the design of the unit, you can have some real serious problems, being that it is straining a little bit too hard to dehumidify simply because its capacity is so large. It runs for a period of time, gets caught up real quick, and cuts off. So it really doesn't get a chance to get that coil super good and cold. You lose efficiency, and you can also cause it, because it doesn't get that coil really saturated with cold where it sweats and takes the moisture out. You might find that you have a humidification problem. If you get it too small, obviously it may run all the time, and you put more hours on your unit. So those are some of the things. Make sure you size your unit correctly, and you'll have to do your research how to do that. I can't do a manual J for you, which is something we would normally do for a central unit, but the concept of manual J is that we look at where the house faces, the amount of glass it has, the R in the insulation, the U in the windows, in the fenestration, that sort of thing. And so it's a technical thing, site built specific to your case, your unit. So let's look back at this. So we can see that we've got its maximum is 9,000. It's rated at 6,000. The minimum capacity is it's going to run at 1,700. This can be a lower limit you don't really want to exceed if you can help it. Now we get down to heat, back down to heat. This is at the typical where we might see a lot of Tennessee weather, and it says it is rated for Where is it? Right here. Rated capacity at 8,700 BTUs or 1,400 or 14,000 BTUs, which is over a ton in heating at 47 degrees. And what we see about a heat pump is, you notice that at different temperatures, the maximum capacity is 14,000 at 47. Watch when we go down to 17 degrees, if I can get the right line, it's 12,800. It's holding pretty good all the way down to 17 degrees Fahrenheit. We get down to 5, one of those rare occasions, it's at 10.5, and you get down here all the way down to minus 13. Hopefully you won't burst any pipes or anything of that nature. It won't be too terribly bad. Now let's look at something else. Hey, appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, if you will, subscribe to the channel, either the YouTube or the Rumble channel, which this appears in, and if you can, check the notification bell or settings to make sure that you get notified when new videos are posted. Appreciate it. This is a big thing. What are you buying in terms of your efficiency? SEER2 is the new that take effect this year, and not all units are SEER2 rated. They're a little bit lower, I think you'll find, maybe a little bit higher depending on the design of the unit. And we'll see SEER for this is at 33.1 with the SEER2 at 32.2. So what does that tell us? It tells us we have a pretty high efficiency unit if it's installed and paired correctly. Does that make sense to you? So yes, a Mitsubishi is probably going to be more expensive than some of the other ones that you might find, maybe even what you have available through your local dealers. I don't want to mention any names, but there are a lot of names out there that'll sell a unit that's cheaper, and someone will, they may take advantage of that and know that you're price sensitive and sell you something cheaper, or do a DIY and you might find it's maybe a third of that efficiency. And that can be a big issue for longevity of the unit, because most of the time the high efficiency units are generally built a little bit smarter. They're built a little bit wider. We have to look at things such as, how does a condenser or evaporator work? Well, back when I was designing refrigeration equipment, commercial refrigeration equipment for food service industry, not so much air conditioner, but we had the same principles apply to heating and cooling things there. Most of the time we did not use heat pumps. We use just refrigeration, no heat pump function to it, so there's no changeover valve, there's no booster heaters, none of that stuff, just a refrigerator. And we would have a certain coil size built to do a certain superheat at a narrow range of mass flows. And what that does is, if we start to force that efficiency up, we have to have bigger capacity, bigger coils. If nothing else, we have to have a bigger coil to take care of it. But now, under some situations, that coil could then be too large. And so what we might find that we'll have with high efficiency units is some fancier electronics needed to have a variable flow on the mass flow, which we actually are going to pump it differently. So it takes other than just a standard single speed compressor. Maybe some of the cheaper units that have a little bit higher SEER may actually be 2-speed or whatever, but some of them may be like this one, which has a compressor that is able to adjust over a much wider range, because we need to have a lot less flow in the coil. And we also need to monitor and measure, not necessarily measure, but we need to be able to adjust the airflow across the coil as well. Otherwise, we really will have a big coil. We really will have an oversized coil, and we'll have too much superheat. It won't work right, simply because it's too big. How we make a big coil appear smaller is we can change the mass flow of air across the coil. And also, I think I pointed out in this particular condensing unit, it actually has a blue fin. It's a coated fin system on the outside evaporator. And that's extra expense and extra money that had to go into making this unit that you may not find on a cheaper unit. You may find a lower quality, cheaper unit with a shorter lifespan not have that particular feature. So let's go back and look at the specs again. Now we can look through this at our leisure, and we can look at the outdoor unit. I think the indoor unit, if I pull it up, it talks about what it has, this interface. Now this thing has something that's pretty cool, and we'll pull up the operator's manual in just a minute, because we're going to look at the features that this unit has that some of the others may not have. Now we'll look at it right now. This indoor unit is really a nice bit of kit. Mitsubishi did a good job with it. It has probably more features than you'll need or ever want to have. I think I'll go ahead and put my face back up there. If you can see from this picture, this little nub that hangs down right here. Now what this is a little infrared sensor. This I think is the receiver for the remote. This down here is a little infrared scanner. And it rotates scanning the room. And what it will do, what it enables this unit to do, because you see it's got 4 vanes. I didn't highlight that, but it's got definitely has 2 big vanes. There's also 2 smaller vanes in here. It can control the airflow in the room. Where you put it can make it a lot more comfortable in your installation, depending on your particular needs. Maybe you can't put it dead center of a room. Well, this one, if you remember when we did the mounting video, we talked about setting it up. Okay, we could get it closer to the ceiling if we were center of the room, and if it was to either end, we'd have to mount it a little bit lower. And you might think about that without necessarily having to follow the strict limitation of either extreme. If you have to be a little bit more off center, maybe you're a little toward the third of the room instead of the actual kind of corner, you might be able to have it just a little bit higher than all the way down, but you need to follow the instructions. So if we look at this, what this thing does is it scans, and it has the ability to see where you are in the room, because it has some neat little functions, such as in cooling mode, perhaps you want the air to hit you directly and to always be like a fan blowing on you. Or maybe in winter, you want it not to be on you directly because it feels maybe their BTUs will be there because it's a heat pump, but maybe it feels a little breezy on you and you'd rather not have the evaporative cooling off your skin. Well, this one allows you to have a direct and indirect modes. That's one of the things it does. It can also do some setbacks if it doesn't see warm bodies moving around. And it does have some features that some of the cheaper units probably are not going to have. Let's scroll through here a little further. It does have a large remote control. And it's kind of like your TV clicker. This is showing with the little slider in the down position. It slides all the way up. It kind of stops halfway. Gives you a good little breakdown here. Here's your remote control receiving thing that I told you about. Your indicator lights, your 1 and 2 lights, and your IC sensor. That's the one I just talked to you about. Well, this is a fairly complicated thing. We're not going to hit everything in it, but I want to show you some of the features so that you can say, well, the Mitsubishi had that, which is a pricier unit you probably will find, versus some of this stuff you might find on Amazon, intended for DIYers, but may not even have a warranty on it because they're selling it to a DIYer, and it's in their warranty information. They're not going to warranty it for it. So you do have to be either a professional or you have to have a professional install a lot of these, whether they're DIY or not. So that's an expense you need to also add in there. You're not going to get something for nothing is the point. All right, slide on down. It tells you how to set the clock, how to put the batteries in, pretty typical stuff. Let me slide this back up just a little bit. Setting the installation position. Now, it won't know if you don't tell it. And as this picture shows, not all of them are actually capable of adjusting for its position in the room. Let me slide it up just a little bit. Now we're back to full screen on the center panel, and we can see that we can set it either for a right mount, left mount, or center, and that's going to be involved with how it handles the air distribution through the room. It's just telling you, just tell it where it's at so it knows where to look and where to put the air. Because maybe you don't want a perfect fan pattern like this. And if you're stuck in your particular home having to put it right or put it left because of something that you have in the middle, you don't want all your air constantly smacking against this side and blowing back over here. You want it to cool the room as best it possibly can, or heat the room as best it possibly can. So that's one of the little features that this thing will do that perhaps some of the cheaper, less quality units won't do. Absence detection, that's sort of like your occupancy sensor on your commercial building where you walk into the bathroom and it automatically turns your lights on for you because it knows somebody walked in there. It works like that. And we have, of course, indirect and direct mode. I talked about that. Indirect mode will do exactly what it says. Indirect mode will blow it to the sides. Direct will kind of push it down toward the middle. And of course, the sweep, which is what that is, means it'll go across the different rooms. Now, I don't know if it actually follows the human to, like, say, this corner and shoots the air this way or not, but it does have that ability to at least do indirect and direct mode. Now, on the operation, you can set it to do a cooling only, heating only, dry mode, which is a combination of both of those, designed to keep the temperature but run the air conditioner enough that it keeps the moisture down. It has to, because it has to sweat. It has to sweat to take and get the condensation off to dry the air out. So that's going to be somewhere in between the heat and the cool, and look where they put it. And auto mode is where I put it, and that's a big feature for me, the auto mode. Because putting it in auto mode, you don't have to do your seasonal switchovers. Perhaps some of the cheaper units that you might find, it's like my central units. With the thermostats I have, it comes on either in heat mode or cool mode, and I have to manually switch it over. This is smart enough that you can put it in auto mode, and it takes care of a lot of that. Let's go back again. Auto mode. Let me slide that back up so we can read that together. Auto changeover. And it tells you that's exactly what it does. During auto mode, the unit changes mode from heat to cool and back and forth when the room temperature is about 4 degrees away from the temperature for more than 15 minutes. So if you're one of those people that has cool nights and warm days a good percentage of the year, that's a pretty neat little feature to have. You might be willing to pay for that versus some of the other units. Look again. Cool mode. Well, that's exactly what we think it is. Dry mode, it dehumidifies the room. And it says here, the room may be cool slightly. Well, that's because it has to sweat in order to take the humidity out. And that only happens in cool mode. Heat mode, enjoy it. The warm temperature fan, that's just straight like any other fan. It talks about further down in here, we can talk about the indicator lamps. We don't need to look at that too much. Up, down, airflow, and direction. Well, you have auto, which is what I have mine set for. I just let it do its own little thing. You can either set fixed position if for instance, you have a very small room and you really don't want it blowing on you, you want to blow it, maybe project across the plants, the tables, the TVs, anything in the room you want it to kind of get over to the other side. You can set it up high manually. You can bring it down, these different things, or you can make it swing up and down. It also will swing left and right. And if you'll notice, you have a left vane and a right vane because this is a 4-vane type system. So there's your swing, there's your manual. It'll give you the little up and down arrow, the back and forth arrows. And it says, okay, left, right airflow direction, shows you your swing. This is not a cheap, I would call it Amazon. I don't want to ding Amazon. I don't want anybody to think I'm dissing anybody or anybody who sells on Amazon. But this is not a low-end unit. Auto, quiet, and it is very quiet on auto. If you need to put it, you can manually set it at these different fan speeds, but I just leave it on auto, let it do its thing, and I can barely hear it where I have it installed because it's a fairly small space. Now, if we come down here, let's see some other features you might look for or ask about. Smart set. During heat or cool, the mode starts smart set. It says smart set operation cannot be set on the weekly timer. Does your unit have a weekly timer? Do you have the ability to set a schedule so that it's saving you money while you're off at work? Okay. Econo cool, that's a little different thing that they have that the high efficiency allows them to do. Let's see what we have here. Timer on off. You can set it to go a certain length of time. Does your head unit have a timer that you can set it to operate on that time? Like here's your day of week type situations. You get an idea. It runs just like a full thermostat. And this thing can actually be used to hook a remote to it, another type. You can control it off your phone. It takes another board, and I think to put a different type of thermostat, like if you wanted one that works like I have, what is it, the Nest system I think I have? I have Nest system. I think it has a second board you have to buy to go with the other board, the cloud board, in order to hook your Nest to it, but you can do it, then control it back through that if I'm not terribly mistaken. I haven't really investigated that because I'm not going to use it for that purpose. Here we have the filters. It talks about the filters. It has a deodorizing filter, kind of a carbon filter, has an electrostatic filter, and just sort of a pre-screen type of thing to catch things with. I'm not a Mitsubishi electric salesman. I'm not trying to push it on you. I'm trying to give you some information in this fourth video that would help you in your selection decision. Do you want to try to do it yourself? Do you have like a garage or something you want to put it together and save a few bucks? You can. I would ask to make sure that your warranty isn't violated if you do it yourself. I would like to make sure that there are some features that if you want them, you better buy them when you start because you're not going to get them later on. I want to hit a little bit on the efficiency of the unit because a lot of times the design work that we have to put into a very high efficiency unit will have other features that maybe they go out and give you trouble, or maybe they might extend the life of your unit. One of the biggest things I think we have, if we put them in garages and whatever, is that we don't keep the indoor unit clean. And of course, we can have a problem not keeping the outdoor unit clean as well with the grass and the dirt and the mulch or whatever. Some people like to put bushes in front of condensing units because they want to hide them for some reason and they choke the things off. So there's a lot of different consideration you have. But with this, you get a good idea of some of the features you get if you get the high-end Mitsubishi head unit. They also make a cheaper, more, I don't want to use that word Amazon again, more like you might find broadly being advertised to people who are price sensitive. And I would think that the more price sensitive you are, the more likely you are to want to do it yourself. And so those do it yourself units are probably going to be low SEER. So they're going to cost a lot to operate, be a lot less sensitive, a lot less flexible when it comes to variable outputs. Maybe louder. You may not have all of the abilities that this has. So you make your own mind up, and maybe you've got some better questions to ask when you go look at it. Is your unit even rated for extreme cold like this one is? Maybe you don't need it that much, and you think, well, gosh, I don't want to pay that extra for that, until that one day when it gets colder than all 7 kinds of Hades out there for you. So you might just, it's just something you need to think about before you buy. And the other question is, do you really want to tackle this yourself, putting a unit in? Do you want to take a risk of throwing that $800 or $1,200 away because you wanted to save the installation fee? There's refrigeration and air conditioning, heating and cooling, ventilation is something that is a skill set, and you need to have a pretty good ability to do things pretty quick on the uptake and the ability to filter through the information and when you make your decision. Hope this was a worth it video. You know, some videos we look at, we go, that wasn't worth my time, and some of them are. And I'd like to think that I bring you something that other people don't, because some people just do things and they video them as they go, and it may be the first time they've done something. They may not really have a lot of experience doing that thing which they're doing. And to some degree, some of the people who install units may not have that much experience doing it as well. I don't know what their background is, but interview your installation people well. See if they're well recommended. Ask what type of products they use. A lot of times they're getting something that's not dissimilar from what's available to the do-it-yourselfers, but they're available at a supply house and they're able to get something. And just because it came from a supply house does not necessarily mean it's better. Doesn't mean it's worse. Do your research. Appreciate you watching. Have a great day.